What's the most important part of any TTRPG? Fun, fuck nerds to math. So how do I want to do math in my game? Well, there are tons of ways to add mechanics to different parts of a role-playing game, some more complicated and some less so. But like I mentioned in the last episode, I know that I want the system to be easy to learn, and to have it support roleplay as much as possible. So let's firstly take a look on how we want to decide if a success or a failure happens. I picked the tried and tested D20 since it's simple and is what most people are used to. I dabbled with using the D6 system like year 0, but I ended up preferring the wider range you get from a bigger dice. Then we have to add stuff to roll for. One of the most common things that you will roll for in a system is to decide if you can do a thing or not. This could be jumping over a big hole or betting the food a elf barmaid. And we could just roll the dice unprotected and raw, but that would mean all characters have an equal chance of succeeding a given conflict. And I'm not a communist, so I'm gonna add aspects. This is what I will call stats in my games, partly because it's de-gamifies the system, but mostly because it sounds cool. There should be enough of them to make sure the characters stay unique without overlapping too many core stats, but not so many that we make it too complicated. So let's look at what makes up a character. The first thing that comes to my mind is a character's physical ability. This could be in a strong lift-heavy sort of way, but I would also argue that it includes dexterity as well, a stat that would encompass all of a character's physical ability. That is the most obvious one, but to figure out the rest we want to look at what characters we are taking inspiration from. In a lot of fairy tales you will have unyielding knights, so a stat that represents willpower and spirit would be a good second. Let's make it also tie into how well a person can resist certain mental effects, like fear or corruption. Talking to NPCs is also often a large part of roleplay, so let's add social skills, something like into charisma in D&D. And I already know I want wizards in the game, so an intelligence stat would also be good. Now just having these 4 would be enough, but I would like to add one last stat, a stat that decides how close to nature someone is. My biggest reason for this is because you will often find characters that are closely tied to nature when you read fairy tales. Someone like Snow White, as an example, with her ability to communicate with wildlife. And we could give these stats normal names, but I'm not normal, so let's give them some spice. Firstly, we have Vessel. This is your character's relationship with the body. Strength, balance, coordination, reflexes, endurance, acrobatics, all of it falls under Vessel. Secondly, we have Flame, your character's ability to get back up and their undying will. I named it this because you will often talk about a flame of hope or a spark of hope within someone, so I named it Flame. Then we have Mask. Lying, charming, and persuading someone is all tied from mask your character puts on. Ergo, Mask. Ego is your character's mental ability. Magic, mechanics, history, and medicine would be under Ego, so it would reflect both practiced and studied knowledge. And lastly, we have Spirit. This is the aspect that's tied to nature and the ancient parts of the world. Now, why did I make that sound as blurry and as unclear as possible? Well, it's by design. In Old Tree, I want to give the players the ability to argue for certain aspects to be used when they do a roll. Picking a lock could, for example, be done with both Ego, being that they know how the lock works and how to exploit its weakness, or with Vessel, because they have the finesse and muscle memory to unlock it. I feel like this lends to the most creativity and the most fun, since it prevents characters from being locked into what their class gives them. Another important part of roleplay is conflicts and combat. There are 3 major things to have for a fight to actually work, and that is movement, attacks, and how much a character can take. Movement was the easiest thing to decide because ever since I saw it being used in Vason, I've been in love with it, and it is combat zones. In D&D you might have a room that's 20 by 10 feet divided into 5-foot large squares that the characters can move in. But in combat zone, that room might only be 1 or 2 zones. A character in D&D can with the highest likelihood clear the room on 1 turn, so why add all the extra work with the movement space? Instead, you can simply move wherever you'd like within the zone. But what if there's a larger combat map? Well, you just add more zones. An example could be this field with a tower on it. The field is pretty big, and with the tower having 3 floors and a single door to get in and out. Here I would argue for a zone layout like this, where the field is split into 4 zones, and with each floor of the tower being a separate zone. This also removes the need to measure distances between you and opponents and speeds up the combat as a whole. Attacks are slightly more complicated. I know I want spells, so that will get its own video, but taking a look at non-magical weapons only, we can decide that we need to roll a d20 plus Vessel. But there are many different weapon types, and we want to make sure that they're unique so it actually has gameplay impact depending on what weapon you choose. This is also sadly something that I would like to make a different video for, because it's a lot of things to dive into. But trust me, it is going to be worth it, because that means we can actually give it more uniqueness. But what about damage and health, and what are you comparing the attack roll against? Well, let's start with health. In the original script for episode 1 I briefly talked about this, But basically my take is that normal health pools like in D&D are really boring, and they don't really do much aside from being a countdown to when you go down, which isn't really that satisfying from a story perspective. Someone that's barely been scraped and someone with both arms cut off will have severely different combat abilities, and I want to include that in All-Tree. But because of this reason, we can't have a huge health pool, because it would make it 10 times more complicated to add thresholds where certain effects take place. Instead, let's use 10 health states, which might sound low, but if we also make all attacks deal a baseline of 1 damage, we get combat that's fast and more suspenseful. Enemies might have more or less health, and depending on what class you have and what abilities you get, you might have extra health or ways to deal more damage. But if you take damage each turn, that means the only thing that matters is whichever side has the highest health pool, and that's not really fun, so let's add armor. This will be the goal that you will have to reach with the attack roll to actually deal damage, but I want to add another number on top of the normal armor rating, a lower number and a higher rating, if you will. Let's say a character has chain armor, with a low rating of 14 and a higher rating of 18. They are then attacked by an enemy, and the enemy rolls 13. Here it's lower than both numbers, so nothing happens. But what if that number is a 16? Well, now it's higher than the lower rating, but below the higher rating, then the character takes 1 damage. But now, what if the enemy rolls a 19? Well, since it's higher than both the low and the high rating, it now deals an additional point of damage, dealing 2 damage. This makes it so rolling over an armor rating is good, but rolling even higher is even better. But what about rolling a 20? Well, just like most games, you will have a critical hit. To keep it simple this early in development, I'd say it just adds an additional health state of damage. This might be changed in the future, just like everything else. But sometimes you, because of an outside influence, might have a better or worse chance to hit someone. So I will just steal the disadvantage and advantage rule from D&D and use that. You roll the d20 twice and pick the higher or lower result. It's simple and easy and just really good. These are the rules that will make the foundation of this game, and I'm actually quite happy with them. Obviously numbers and specifications will be tweaked in the future. Hell, I doubled the max health just now writing the script, but that's part of the fun, getting to look back and change what no longer fits. But that's all that I wanted to share today, and a little more. The response from the first video has been insane, and I just thank you everyone who's been watching. I went to bed with, I think, 30 subscribers and I woke up with 80 and I was like, oh, what the fuck? A very nice surprise to a sick day. So thank you. But we'll see how this video goes, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.